Hi, I'm Carla Burkett, and I'm the Artistic Director of Lark Productions, and I'm happy to be here to introduce Hamlet for this week's discussion. Hamlet is a long, dense, wordy, complicated play full of difficult characters, difficult ideas, difficult scenes to stage, difficult relationships, characters that you really kind of want to like, and they keep doing kind of terrible things to each other. It's been studied and written about and taken apart and interpreted in every possible way for hundreds of years. It is a must-do tragedy for many theater companies and for many actors. One of the things that we need to do when we're watching Hamlet, discussing Hamlet, is we need to kind of get rid of all the baggage that's been added to it and look at it simply as a play, simply as a story. And what is the story about? The story of Hamlet can't simply be about one character. He's operating in a world with other characters, and there's relationships, and there's pushing and pulling and things that go on. In the first scene, before Hamlet ever appears on stage, we learn that Denmark, the country of Denmark, of which he is the prince, and heir apparent, Denmark is preparing for invasion because young Prince Fortinbras of Norway is intent on getting back the land that old King Hamlet won when he killed Fortinbras's father. So the country is building up militarily, preparing for invasion. And the other thing that we learn in that first scene is that the ghost of King Hamlet has been walking nightly on the battlements, and he's been observed there by the soldiers. And he won't communicate to them, but they know that this means that there's something wrong, or the king's ghost would be able to rest. In the second scene, we learn that King Hamlet's younger brother Claudius has quickly married his brother's widow and been elected king, and is sending ambassadors to Norway to try to keep Fortinbras from coming and invading. And in the same scene, we see him start relating with his nephew Hamlet, who is obviously very unhappy with his uncle marrying his mother and taking on the role of king so rapidly. Claudius and Gertrude are telling Hamlet, you need to stop being mourning for your father. You need to celebrate with us our marriage and this new reign of Claudius. In the same scene, we also see Claudius interact with Polonius and Laertes. Polonius is an advisor to the king. Laertes is his son. And Claudius gives Laertes permission to go back to his studies in France and wishes him well on his way. At the same time, turns around to Hamlet and says, it's against our wishes that you go back to your studies in Wittenberg. At that point, the soldiers come to tell young Hamlet that they've seen the ghost of his father, and they invite him to come and sit and watch with them that night. So in the following scene, very interesting scene in the play, we see Hamlet actually converse with the ghost of his father, who tells Hamlet that he has been murdered by his brother Claudius, who has now taken his place as king and taken his place as Gertrude's husband. And he forces Hamlet to swear revenge on Claudius. Hamlet doesn't really trust this idea, doesn't trust messages from ghosts that appear on battlements, but decides that he will put on a persona and test whether Claudius really appears to be a murderer, and whether there's guilt there. So part of his plan is to put on a play for Claudius. Some visiting actors come, and Hamlet has a brainstorm to put on a play which is about a king who kills his rival and marries the queen. Claudius reacts badly to this play, and that convinces Hamlet that the ghost of his father was truly the ghost of his father and was telling him the truth, and that now he is responsible as the son and heir to revenge his father's death. Meanwhile, we have the plot with Hamlet and Polonius's daughter, Ophelia. Hamlet and Ophelia are quite close. In his change of behavior, he frightens her. She goes and tells her father. Polonius appears to believe that Hamlet has gone mad and goes and tells the king and queen that Hamlet's crazy. It must be because he was in love with my daughter. And they decide to test that theory. So in order to test that theory, Polonius kind of places Ophelia in Hamlet's way, and he and Claudius go and listen behind the curtain to try to determine Hamlet's state of mind when it comes to Ophelia and what's going on with him. Why is his behavior this way? Hamlet seems to be aware that this is a trap, and he treats Ophelia very badly in this scene. It's always a question for people. Why does he behave this way to her? Why is he so abusive with her? But it appears that he knows that this is a trap set by Ophelia's father and his uncle. We then proceed to the play. We see the play happen. We see Claudius's reaction to it. We see Hamlet's resolve becoming more clearly defined as he has to now accept the fact that his uncle Claudius probably killed his father. He has an opportunity to kill Claudius, but doesn't take it, because as a philosopher, young Hamlet does not want to kill his uncle when his uncle is saying his prayers. It's an interesting idea that he speaks very lucidly about, saying, do I want to send him to heaven with his soul pure because he's been praying when he killed my father when my father was asleep? And so he has these moments of doubt that we see as he works through this. Gertrude tries to intervene with Hamlet by calling him to a personal conversation in her room where Hamlet accuses her of being complicit in the plot to kill his father, of knowing that Claudius did this. She denies it. Hamlet's feeling the pressure of his knowledge from the ghost. He's feeling the pressure of his relationship with his mother and uncle. Hearing something behind the curtain, he assumes it's his uncle Claudius. He stabs through the curtain and unfortunately kills Polonius, who has been listening into the conversation. And now Hamlet has committed murder, done something that he was so reluctant to do. This starts us on a spiral with Claudius understanding now that Hamlet is onto him, that Hamlet is, in fact, bent on revenge for his father's death, sends Hamlet away ostensibly for his own safety and for the safety of the people at court, but sends two companions with Hamlet with a message sealed up in an envelope asking the King of England, when Hamlet arrives there, to have Hamlet killed. This is Claudius's way of dispatching the problem of Hamlet. Hamlet then disappears from the play for quite some time, and we see things starting still to unravel in Elsinore. The removal of Hamlet does not really help. Claudius is plagued by guilt because of the death of Polonius. Ophelia, his daughter, is starting to lose her grip. And in the midst of this, Ophelia's brother Laertes returns from France, having heard of the death of his father. He comes in ready to besiege the castle with followers behind him who are eager to see Laertes take over as king. Claudius quickly tries to defuse the situation with Laertes and his rabble that are surrounding the castle by redirecting Laertes' anger against Hamlet. He just says, your beef is with Hamlet. We need to somehow revenge ourselves on him. Claudius is under the impression that his message sent with Hamlet would work, but receives a message that Hamlet has returned safe and sound. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. And now he knows that things are coming to a head. So he brings Laertes into his plan to kill Hamlet. Unfortunately, while all this is happening, nobody's been watching Ophelia. Gertrude returns and informs Laertes that in the interim, his poor mad sister has drowned in the river, which only reinforces Laertes' need to revenge himself upon Hamlet. So this plays right into Claudius's plan. Then we get the chance to see the very famous gravedigger scene where Hamlet, in returning to Elsinore, comes across a gravedigger preparing the grave for Ophelia. He doesn't realize that it's Ophelia's grave, but has a long conversation, a rather comic conversation with the gravedigger about the nature of death and burial. One of the classic images from the play is Hamlet and the skull. The skull is apparently the skull of the king's old jester, Yorick, who knew Hamlet as a child, and Hamlet has the opportunity to philosophize about death, decay. Hamlet's brief moment of philosophy about death over the skull of Yorick is interrupted by the arrival of the funeral procession for Ophelia. On realizing that this is Ophelia, Hamlet reveals himself to the group. Laertes has jumped into his sister's grave and is weeping over her coffin, and Hamlet challenges Laertes' sorrow by saying that he loved her more than her brother did. And there's a moment of coming to blows over the coffin of Ophelia, which then needs to be resolved later. And in the final act of the play, Laertes challenges Hamlet to a duel. This is supposed to be just a fencing match, but Laertes and Claudius have plotted to sharpen the blade of Laertes' sword and to put poison on it, so that if Hamlet even gets merely scratched by the sword, he will die. Claudius also poisons a cup of wine that he's going to offer Hamlet. So he's very clearly got his bases covered as far as getting rid of this problem. Hamlet, who is a threat to his life and who is trying to revenge himself on Claudius. This final scene is very fraught with a lot of things going on. And in the passion of the moment, Laertes and Hamlet accidentally pick up each other's swords. Laertes gets struck with his own poisoned sword, and as he is dying, confesses the whole plot with Claudius. Hamlet has also been scratched by the poisoned sword, but the poison is working slightly slower on him. And in that moment, he turns and he revenges himself on Claudius by stabbing him with the sword and giving him the poisoned wine to drink. But in a brief moment before that, Gertrude has reached for the poisoned cup. Claudius rather ineffectually tries to stop her, but she toasts to Hamlet and drinks the poisoned wine. So in the final moments of the play, the stage is littered with dead bodies. Hamlet is dying. Horatio speaks his beautiful speech over the prince as he dies. And Fortinbras, who has been apparently marching across Denmark throughout the entire time period of the play, arrives at the castle in time to find this end of the house of King Hamlet of Denmark. And the play ends with Fortinbras standing over Prince Hamlet and mourning for this young man who never really achieved his kingship. Essentially, Hamlet, less a play about a single young man and more a play about several young men, all of whom have lost their fathers and to some degree lost their agency in their world. Fortinbras, at the beginning of the play, his father has been killed by King Hamlet in the past. He is struggling to regain some of his father's land, and he has a very clear motivation, a very clear path of regaining what the death of his father lost. Hamlet obviously has lost his father and lost his agency and is struggling throughout the play to revenge his father's death, redeem his position as prince, and set right what has gone wrong, not only in his family, but in his country. Laertes has also lost his father and responds very quickly and very violently and with a great deal of passion, but is very quickly led off the mark by the plotting of King Claudius. These three young men and their common experience through these losses of each of their fathers, murders of each of their fathers, are one of the key drivers of the plotting of this play and the themes of the play. A few key questions that arise when you're studying the play or watching the play. Why does the playwright choose to have the ghost appear at the very beginning? Why does the ghost have this very central role in spurring the further action of the play? I think to explore that idea is really interesting and can give you insights into the idea of this revenge tragedy, which is not a typical revenge tragedy where all the players are still alive, but it is actually coming from a different spiritual place where the ghost is coming back for revenge. Another question is, why do we see Claudius give Laertes the freedom to return to France and his studies, and at the same time refuse to let Hamlet return to Wittenberg to his studies? I think in exploring that juxtaposition, which again happens in the very first moments of the play as an inciting incident, helps to clarify the characters as you go further into the play. Another key question that helps to determine your approach to the play is, how much does Gertrude know about Claudius's murder of her husband, Hamlet? How much is she aware of Claudius's true nature? Is it a surprise for her when Hamlet tells her this? Or does she have some knowledge and culpability?